the heart of America. The flower and the fog. The dawn in Maplewood, Ohio, did not break. It seeped. A gray, comfortable fog rolled over the manicured lawns and white picket fences, eventually settling against the glass front of the Parker family bakery. Inside, Ella Parker was already awake. At 23, her hands knew the rhythm of kneading dough better than they knew the touch of another person. Push, fold, turn. It was a meditative dance she had inherited from her mother, and her grandmother before her. But lately, the smell of yeast and vanilla, once a warm embrace here, felt like a suffocating blanket. She wiped a streak of flour from her cheek and looked out the window. The town was waking up. Mr. Henderson was walking his golden retriever. The school bus was turning the corner. It was a perfect, idyllic life, and Ella wanted to scream. "You're doing it again," a voice croaked. Ella jumped. Her grandmother, Nana Rose, stood in the doorway, leaning on her cane. "Doing what, Nana?" "Looking at the horizon like it owes you money." Nana Rose chuckled, but her eyes were sad. "Go upstairs to the attic. I need the old cast iron skillet. And while you're up there, look in the cedar chest." The attic smelled of dry cedar and memories. Ella found the skillet, but her eyes were drawn to the chest. Inside, buried under moth-eaten quilts, was a leather tube. She pulled out a map. It wasn't a standard Rand McNally Road atlas. It was hand-drawn on thick parchment, dated 1974. It was Nana Rose's handwriting. The Painted Desert, the French Quarter, the Greenwich Village Folk Festival. Lines connected the dots, but there were no check marks. No dates of arrival. It was a map of a trip planned, but never taken. Ella traced the ink with a trembling finger. She realized with a jolt that she wasn't just looking at a map, she was looking at a ghost story. If she stayed in Maplewood, this would be her map in 50 years, so pristine, perfect, and tragically unused. The crew Maya Johnson's studio was the antithesis of the bakery. It smelled of turpentine and chaos. Canvases were stacked against the walls, half-finished bursts of violent color. "We have to go," Ella said, breathless, slamming the map onto a table covered in paint tubes. Nana never went. She got married, she had Dad, she took over the bakery. She stayed. "I can't just stay, Maya." Maya looked at the map, then at Ella's desperate eyes. Maya was the wild one, the artist who dyed her hair a different color every month, currently electric blue, but even she felt the gravity of this. "My lease is up next week," Maya said slowly, a grin spreading across her face. "I was going to renew it, but I think I'd rather renew my soul." They needed wheels. Jake Thompson was buried waist-deep in the engine block of a Ford F-150 when they found him. He was the town's golden boy, a reliable, handsome in a rugged way, and utterly predictable. "No," Jake said, wiping grease onto a rag. "Absolutely not. You want to take Betsy." "Ella, that convertible has been sitting in your barn since the Clinton administration. It has no suspension. The radiator is shot." "Then fix it," Ella challenged him, stepping into his personal space. "You're the best mechanic in the state. Or are you just going to change oil for Mr. Henderson's minivan for the rest of your life?" Jake stopped wiping his hands. He looked at the grease under his fingernails. He looked at the fluorescent lights of the garage that hummed with a monotonous buzz. He had always been the safe guy, the guy who stayed. "If the radiator blows in the middle of the desert," Jake warned, pointing a wrench at her, "I am not pushing it." Infinite horizons. It took 2 weeks of late nights, bruised knuckles, and $300 in parts to get Betsy running. When they finally crossed the county line, the engine purred with a low, throaty rumble. The Midwest fell away, replaced by the sprawling plains of the West. The Grand Canyon wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was a wound in the earth that bled colors: ochre, rust, violet, and burning orange. They stood on the south rim as the sun began to set. "I feel small," Maya whispered, clutching her sketchbook against her chest. "Like dust motes small." "It's good to feel small," Ella replied, the wind whipping her hair across her face. "When you're small, your problems are even smaller." They camped that night under a sky that looked like spilled glitter. They drank cheap wine from plastic cups, and for the first time in years, Ella didn't dream of leaving. She was already gone. Route 66 and the ghost of a dream. The drive down Route 66 was a pilgrimage through a forgotten America. They ate at diners with checkered floors and neon signs buzzing like trapped flies. Somewhere in New Mexico, Betsy's engine sputtered, while Jake cursed and dove under the hood in the parking lot of a motel shaped like a wigwam. Ella sat on a curb next to an elderly couple, Hank and Martha. They were sitting in lawn chairs outside their RV. "We waited too long," Hank told Ella, staring at the distant mesas. His voice was raspy. "Martha's knees aren't good for hiking anymore. And my eyes. Well, night driving is hard. We saved for 40 years for this trip. But the money doesn't buy back the time, young lady." Ella looked at Jake, sweating and swearing at the radiator, and Maya, laughing as she tried to paint a cactus. She realized the currency of youth wasn't money, it was energy. She wrote a song that night in her journal, titled "The Currency of Now." Rhythm and blues. Nashville was loud. It was a cacophony of bachelorette parties and pedal taverns, but underneath the tourist trap veneer was the heartbeat of music. Maya and Jake dragged a reluctant Ella to the Bluebird, a small, legendary venue. When the MC asked for volunteers, Jake literally pushed Ella out of her chair. "You didn't come 2,000 miles to watch," he whispered in her ear. On stage, the lights were blinding. Ella could smell the stale beer and floor polish. She gripped her guitar, her knuckles white. She closed her eyes and thought of the flour dust in the bakery, the fog, and the map. She began to play. Her voice, usually soft, found a jagged, soulful edge. She sang about leaving, about the fear of the open road. When she finished, there was a beat of silence, followed by genuine, raucous applause. Jake was beaming in the front row. The look he gave her wasn't the look of a childhood friend. It was the look of a man seeing a woman for the first time. By the time they reached New Orleans, the dynamic had shifted. The air was thick with humidity and jasmine. They walked through the French Quarter, sharing a bag of bagnets. Maya walked ahead, sketching the iron balconies. "You've changed," Jake said to Ella. They were standing on a corner while a brass band played a slow, morning dirge. "I hope so," Ella said. "I like it," Jake admitted. He reached out, his hand brushing hers. It was electric, terrifying, and inevitable. The city that never sleeps. The high of the trip crashed into the wall of reality in New York City. Traffic was gridlocked. It was raining. The hotel they booked turned out to be a scam, leaving them with very little money and nowhere to sleep. They were parked illegally in Brooklyn, tired, hungry, and broke. "I told you we should have budgeted better in Memphis," Jake yelled, slamming his hand on the steering wheel. "Oh, stop being the dad." Maya snapped from the back seat. "Someone has to be the adult," Jake retorted. "We can't eat dreams, Maya." Ella felt the walls closing in again. The skyscrapers loomed over them like bars of a cage. "Stop it," Ella shouted. "Both of you. We're in the greatest city in the world and we're fighting about parking. We're fighting because this is over, Ella." Jake turned on her. "The money is gone. We have to go back. Back to Maplewood. Back to reality." "I am not going back," Ella screamed, the fear of the bakery seizing her throat. "I'm not going back to be a baker and die in the same zip code I was born in." "Then what are you going to do? Live in the car?" "I'd rather live in the car than become you, Jake." "So scared of everything you never take a breath." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake's face went pale. He unlocked the doors. "Get out," he whispered. "Fine." Ella grabbed her guitar case and walked into the rain. Solitude and reconciliation. Ella walked until her boots soaked through. She sat in a 24-hour diner near Times Square, nursing a cold coffee. She watched the peoply models, businessmen, homeless veterans, tourists. Everyone was going somewhere. She took out her journal to write, but she couldn't. The adventure wasn't the buildings. It wasn't the scenery. It was Maya making fun of roadside statues. It was Jake fixing the car with a smile. It was the three of them against the world. Without them, New York was just cold concrete and noise. She realized that independence didn't mean isolation. At 4 a.m., she walked back to where they had parked. The car was still there. Jake was asleep in the driver's seat, his head against the window. Maya was awake in the back, reading by the light of a street lamp. Maya saw Ella and unlocked the door. Ella climbed in, dripping wet. She looked at Jake, who stirred and woke up. He looked at her, his eyes red and tired. "I'm sorry," Ella said, her voice cracking. "I'm not afraid of becoming you, Jake. I'm afraid of losing this, losing us." Jake let out a long breath and reached over the console, taking her cold hand. "You won't lose us. But we do need gas money." They laughed, a tired, hysterical laughter that healed the cracks in the night. The Maplewood Melodies. The return trip was quieter, but heavier with meaning. They didn't rush. They knew where they were going. When Betsy rolled down Main Street in Maplewood, the leaves were turning gold again. But the town didn't look like a prison anymore. It looked like a blank canvas. 6 months later, the bell above the door chimed. The Parker Bakery still smelled of bread, but now, there was a new aroma. Dark roast coffee and exotic spices from New Orleans. The space had been transformed. Maya's paintings hung on the brick walls of vibrant depictions of the Grand Canyon and the neon lights of Route 66. In the corner, a small stage had been built. Ella wiped the flour from her hands, but she didn't just stand behind the counter. She walked over to the stage. The Café Tilda copyright was full, not just with old regulars, but with young people from the next town over, drawn by the rumor of the singing baker. Jake sat at the best table in the house. He winked at her. Ella adjusted the microphone. She looked at the map, now framed and hanging on the wall behind the register. She had connected the dots. She strummed the first chord of her guitar. She wasn't serving pastries anymore, she was serving inspiration. She had gone to the heart of America, only to realize that she could bring the heartbeat home. "This one," Ella said into the mic, smiling at her friends, "is for the road." The end.